right, welcome everybody. Welcome to our second evening with the Castro Valley Unified School District. Last night we had a fantastic discussion with the elementary school group and had a great panel. We've got many of the same panel members back tonight, and we're excited to share our story. Before we get in, just quick introduction of myself. My name is Steve Nimmo. I'm co-founder of Z-Cares Foundation, and we're super proud to partner with Castro Valley for this event and to make this available to all of you. One of our core missions of what we do is try to provide programming at no cost to our audience, which is it's really important to us that money doesn't become a factor in things like watching the film and attending events like this. So it's really important to us that you're able to do these types of things, and then you just let us worry about where the money comes from, because we've got all that figured out. So we'll move on. So a little bit about the evening. Hopefully you all had a chance to watch the great movie Angst. It has, our contract with IndieFlix did expire last night at midnight, so it is no longer available. So hopefully you did get a chance to watch it sometime during that window of Sunday through yesterday. We're going to be talking about it a little bit, but even if you didn't see it, stay with us, because this is not about the movie Angst. This is about supporting our youth with anxiety and other mental health challenges that they're going through. We're going to share some great tips and tricks. You're going to hear stories. Just it's the whole thing is meant to inspire and to sort of help that there is hope, where to turn to, all of those great things. Just one thing that and you're going to hear me say this probably a couple times, and particularly in my close, and you saw it in the slides if you were watching. Starting Saturday, May 1st, is Mental Health Awareness Month for the whole month. And we really want to challenge you, right? We want to challenge you to talk about mental health as a family. We want to challenge you to reach out to others, and don't forget to take care of yourself along the way. So those are kind of the three areas of the challenge that's out there, and we'll talk about that a little bit more along the way. We do have available to you some resources that are really going to help you in the sort of the talking about it front. And this group's going to talk about some fantastic resources that are out there. But one in particular I just want to point you to is on the page you registered, the zcares.org/CVUSD. We've added a couple of downloadable PDF files. One is what we call Z-Talks Family, which is a home discussion guide to help you navigate a home discussion. There's some great tips and tricks from professionals in there. We invite you to go ahead and download that. Enjoy it. The other one that you'll see on there is what we call our My Action Plan, our MAP, it spells out, and it's meant to help navigate our anxiety. And it's just a little exercise you can go through as a family to help build out, what are my triggers for my mental health? What are some of the things I might be able to do about that? What are some coping strategies? And also, who should I talk to? Right? It helps you list out people to talk to. So I invite you to utilize those tools that are there. Okay, so more importantly, let's get to this fabulous panel. I am so thankful that they've all dedicated their evenings and to be a part of this and join the conversation. So what I'm going to do to kind of open things up, I'm going to let them introduce themselves because they'll do a much better job than I will, is just take a couple of minutes and introduce yourself, kind of who you are type thing, and then just talk about what was the most impactful part of the film Angst to you, right? So what part of the film really spoke to you as far as just kind of like that aha moment. Okay, and I'm just going to use my screen, and maybe different on everybody else's screen for these introductions. But on my screen, we are going to start with Katie and Natalie.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Natalie Hung, and I am with Castro Valley Unified School District. I am the school secretary at Castro Valley Elementary. this movie, there's so many words to describe this movie, but I'm just going to say it's real, it's relatable, and it's our reality. Teen depression, teen anxiety is on the rise. It doesn't discriminate. And so to hear these kids out there putting themselves out there to tell their story and to tell their journey is very impactful. And it gives people hope to feel better, to get better, and to share their journey.
Hi, everyone. My name is Katie. I am Natalie's daughter. I am a student at Diablo Valley College in the baking and pastry program. I'm very passionate about baking. I hope to open my own bakery one day with a bookstore and where I'll sell my own books, things like that. I've seen this film a multitude of times, and my favorite part remains when Michael Phelps shows up. I think when I first saw him, I was like, Michael Phelps, what? And so Michael Phelps shares his story with his depression and his anxiety, and it's very, very impactful for me to hear the story of an Olympic gold medalist, of somebody who you think has it all in his life and should be just so happy. And like my mom said, mental health doesn't discriminate, and it affects everyone of all colors, all income levels. No matter if this person is on a pedestal that we see them on, they could still be facing the same challenges that we are. So for me, that's the most impactful thing that still resonates with me every time I watch the film. So I think that's the biggest one for me.
Well, thank you, Katie and Natalie. And that's the Michael Phelps thing is super cool. And he was kind enough to lend himself. He didn't charge any money to do what he did, and kind enough to lend himself to the film. And I think I shared this last night too. That scene where you see him walk up behind the little boy was a one take cut. That was what you saw was authentic. That was him surprising that little boy. And they're actually friends today. They check in on each other, and it just developed into kind of a neat thing. So that was he's pretty inspiring. He continues to advocate for mental health. So I think that's great. All right, next up, Karina.
Hello, everyone. My name is Karina Fuentes, and I'm also with Castro Valley Unified. I am one of the counselors at Creekside Middle School. Thank you so much for having me here. This is definitely a topic that is near and dear to my heart. And I would say, I mean, this was the first time I had seen the movie, and it was incredibly inspiring. I think the testimonials, obviously from the students, but also from the parents, was really impactful. One thing that I really took away from it, and I love that the movie also, it talked about the testimonials, it talked about the personal struggles, and it also talked about the science behind it. And I'm not a big science person, but I really have known, I have realized through my profession that when you can put some science behind it, it becomes more believable, it becomes more understood, and it becomes more empowering for students and kids and teens to be able to really understand what's going on. And also parents and guardians and even staff members, just having that science behind it, because it's hard to argue with that piece. So I really appreciated having both of those parts involved in the film. So I'm happy to be here tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karina. And we'll spend a little bit of time talking about the science tonight. I learned last night that Nargis is super good at explaining anxiety from a science perspective. So I'm going to put her on the spot again tonight in just a minute. And she did a fabulous job. So I can't wait to hear it again. But before that, let's hear from Marion.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me. So again, I'm Marion Meadows. My pronouns are she and her. And first off, I'm a mom. I have 2 kids in Castro Valley. That's an important identity for me. I'm part of the Castro Valley community. And that, when we talk about Castro Valley kids, we're talking about my friends and my neighbors, my own kids. So I'm from this town and proud to be part of the Castro Valley community. What I do for a job is coordinate behavioral health for the school district. So it's a big word. Basically means I get to be a part of all the great social emotional learning things, behavioral health. And most recently, I've been able to oversee the wellness center at Castro Valley High School. And that has been an amazing experience, just meeting such great students of all kinds and staff. So it's been a really wonderful experience so far. We've only been open 3 or 4 years. So that is my the work that I do. And I have seen the film a couple times, and I'm always just so impressed with the people who get interviewed, the students and the adults. And something that I took away from watching it this time was I was struck again by how often students and young people tell us how they're feeling. They'll tell us how they're feeling, and then we're just kind of like, yeah, you know, get a glass of water. Yeah, you'll be all right. You're just nervous. Like, it's a lot of this like minimization when students and young people are really, they're telling us how they feel. And if we had a different reaction to what they say, we might actually be able to validate a real thing that they're experiencing. So that struck me again this time, is noticing how often young people do communicate. They're actually communicating pretty well about how they're feeling. And as adults, we need to just be better at validating that. So thank you again for inviting me. I'm happy to be with all my esteemed colleagues, and I definitely want to hear from Katie. So I'm excited to be on the panel.
No pressure, Katie. And thank you, Marion. And I look forward to hearing more about the Wellness Center here a little bit later. Super excited about that. But let's hear from Nargis.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nargis Dillon. I'm the Executive Director of Crisis Support Services of Alameda County, and I'm also a marriage and family therapist. And I love Marion sharing that she's a parent. I'm also a parent here in Castro Valley. My kiddo is going to be going to kinder in the fall, so I have a little one. And with me tonight, I really bring I think suicide prevention perspective. That's kind of the bulk of my work has been, which includes working with teens and educating teens and families quite a bit to be our partners in this work. And a part of the movie that stuck out to me was when Karen and the other parent both mentioned the importance of the grown-ups modeling kind of like when they've had a rough day and how they get through it. So like the example they gave is like just saying like, you know, I've had a really hard day at work. I'm going to go do blank to get over it. Or as a way, like I think parents so often want to be strong for their children, and that's totally like understandable, but I think modeling vulnerability and help seeking can actually go a long way in a family, saying like, you know, I've had a rough day, I'm going to call my sister to vent real quick and I know I'll feel better after that, because that way our kids know that they can do the same thing when they've had a hard day, and that there's no shame in having a rough day or needing help.
Yeah, thank you, Nargis. That's great. And by the way, Karen is one of my favorite people on the entire planet. Some of you may not know, Karen is also the executive producer of Angst. So she definitely is living in a space, and you know, the story she told about her son is very, very real. Yeah, she's a fabulous person. So just we did have a question. Someone was trying to ask a question. If you want to ask questions, go ahead and chat them in. We have someone monitoring the chats for us, and they'll feed the questions over to the panel, and you know, we'll try to get them in there. I can't promise every question will be answered depending on how many we get, but we will do our best to get them out there. So just real quick, you know, from my perspective, my favorite part of the movie, there's so many. I've seen the movie you know, over and over again, and probably the part I'm leaning on the most right now, and I kind of shift around a little bit, is there's a section about talking about it, and there's two young girls sharing their story, and one of them says, "If I didn't tell my mom, I don't know if I'd be here today." And that was just a chilling moment for me, just to think about just the pure power of conversation. And what it means. So that just resonates strongly with me, and you can see right over my shoulder, I've got our tagline for Z Cares is talk about it, right? That's really what we're all about, and hopefully, you know, we can challenge all of you to start talking about mental health. And I mean, just again, to hear those words, you know, if she didn't talk to her mom, she wouldn't be here today. Super powerful stuff. So exciting. We have gotten a couple of comments that they missed the movie, and I'm sorry you didn't get a chance to see it, but unfortunately our contract with IndieFlix has expired. It was open Sunday through Tuesday, If you pay attention to the ZCares website, we will have additional times where we will have more screenings. I don't have any on the current plan with, school year winding down. We generally run them during the school year, so it'll probably be fall again before we get them out there. But you can go to angstmovie.com and see if there's other screenings that are out there. There are people doing screenings a lot, and many of them are free. So you can take a look at that and see if you can find an upcoming screening as well. Okay, and I think we've just pushed that out on the chat for everybody. All right, so let's get started. Let's kind of get into the meat of it. And again, if you haven't seen the film, don't worry about it. This is not gonna. That's probably the only time we're going to talk about the film. The rest of the conversation is about youth mental health, right? And what it is, how to support it, what to look for, those types of things, right? So, so don't worry about. Please stay with us and let's continue this conversation. So I'm going to bring Nargis right back on, and I promised you this great science explanation, not to put you on the spot, but if Nargis, you could share a little bit about the brain science of what's going on when someone is has anxiety, or all the way up to struggling with anxiety.
Definitely. So having anxiety is part of our body and our brain's way of telling us like it's assessment of a situation. So I like how thinking that everyone has anxiety. It's just kind of the degree to which it's presenting itself in the moment. And for some people that becomes obviously so prevalent that it gets in their way of getting to things they want to do in their life. So the three parts of our brain that kind of play a part in our experience of anxiety are our thinking brain, which is right behind our forehead, our prefrontal cortex, are kind of what people call the lizard brain, or amygdala, which is right at your brainstem, and then your emotional brain, which is right in the middle center part of it, which is the limbic system. And these three parts kind of work together. You see something, let's say your name on a list that says you're up tomorrow to present in front of the whole school, and your brain starts to assess that situation. And for people who have anxiety, that assessment ends up being everybody might get a little nervous or have some anxiety, but it might not feel in danger of that situation. And when we have anxiety, for those of us who experience anxiety, our emotional brain and our kind of survival brain are firing so much during this time that it basically cuts off access to your thinking brain. And it makes it harder for you to be is this a perceived threat, or is this a real threat? Or what is the right amount of response to the threat or the stressor that I'm kind of working myself up toward? And what that looks like is when our survival brain is activated, it's telling our body to get tense. It makes our heart go faster. It's kind of getting ready to battle basically whatever's coming its way. And when that's happening, that's when people say I feel like I'm having a heart attack, or my heart's beating so fast. So those physical symptoms play such a big role in how people experience anxiety. And that's why a lot of times some of the interventions that people use is to bring the person back to the moment, right? Some of the things I used to do with students is name 5 things you see in the room. And what I'm trying to do through an activity like that is bring them back to the present, begin to re-give them access to their thinking brain, so that we're kind of breaking that cycle of the brain thinking that it's in danger. So a lot of times when you hear people talking about mindfulness or breathing, really the point of those ways of dealing with anxiety is to really bring the person back into the moment and give them access to be able to think clearly and assess the potential stressor, as opposed to be reacting to a potential danger.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Nargis. And one of the professionals in the film also talked about, just by talking about our feelings helps us get out of that amygdala space as well, and kind of get through it. So just another reason to continue to share what we're feeling verbally as we go through that. But yeah, that was great. I'm going to turn to Karina now. Now that we know a little bit of the science behind it, let's talk about kind of what to look for. One is from a parent's point of view, or even a friend, right? what do we look for, from a signs and symptoms and sort of that middle school, high school age, um, for kind of warning signs, and then as a counselor yourself, um, what are you looking for when you're talking to the kids?
Sure. Yeah. Great question. So I know that it can be difficult, especially for, parents and guardians to be able to detect this because it is, it's teenagers, young adults and adolescents. And so we're naturally going through a lot of different changes. And so trying to look for those red flags can be kind of tricky. But in my role and what I would offer to parents and guardians is sometimes it can manifest, anxiety can manifest in physical symptoms. And so oftentimes we can see a lot of students who maybe frequent flyers to the health office complaining of stomach aches or headaches. We definitely, if there's avoidance in any kind of activities that they may have participated in, one major one being school. So some school avoidance. Also, it could be, if they're involved in other activities, whether it's, church or sports or just even gathering with friends, and leaning more towards isolating themselves and veering away from the peer group. We can also look at maybe just a chronic and persistent fear or worry of something, and they may not even be able to pinpoint exactly what it is. Sometimes they can, sometimes it's difficult. It's just something that they really can't describe. So, sleep can and eating can definitely be affected as well. Any kind of disturbance in that area. Those are kind of the big ones. I'm sure, other panelists can also offer that. But as a counselor, I would say what I would see most is avoidance. And I really like that part of the film where they talked a lot about students or young people who are experiencing anxiety. It can come up in avoiding what it is that they fear. And so we see that a lot at school, where it could be not wanting to come to school or not wanting to engage during social times like nutrition break or lunchtime. So really paying attention to that, to those kinds of red flags and different things is what I would say as a counselor. But I open it up to everyone else as well.
Does anyone have anything to add to that list? I thought it was fantastic. Yeah, well said. That was, to me, it was checking all the very typical boxes, that I hear in that space. The one thing in particular is I think you talked about, excessive and persistent, really important things to look at. I mean, when you look at like change in sleep, right? Is it, did they used to get 8 hours and now all of a sudden they're only getting 3 hours, or the other way, right? Do they used to get 8 hours and now they're getting 14 hours, right? So it's a excessive change. Certainly great examples to share out there. If we
can I add something to that too? Yeah, I think Ms. Fuentes outlined those are absolutely the same symptoms that we see at the high school level too. And I want to just name that school creates all kinds of things to be anxious about, right? Middle school, high school, Katie knows as a college student, these are deadlines, these are tests, these are presentations. So I want to just name that environmental piece that even in like being on a sports team or being a performer, right? There are all these environmental things that we put in place as adults that create stress for kids and create anxiety for kids. So it's part of our responsibilities to look at the environment we are creating and whether or not that's healthy stress, or if we're pushing it way too far into an area where there's just it's not necessary to create such an anxiety producing set of events. And again, Katie could probably speak to that well as a college student. Right?
And I think Katie's going to share a little bit very soon. And as long as I have you on, Marian, that's actually a fantastic segue into our next question about sort of contributors to mental health challenges that people are facing. You mentioned school and sports and those types of things, things like social media. Maybe if I can challenge you to expand on that a little bit, of all of these things that are kind of coming in from kind of every side of the kids and kind of where that is kind of leading.
Yeah, absolutely. I can, I kind of discuss those other environmental pieces. And then I do want to talk about social media because it has a profound impact on not just anxiety level, but on brain development. And Ms. Narges will be able to, help me out with the stats if you have anything to add. But what we know about social media in particular is that it's especially harmful for the younger the brain, the more harmful it is. And what I mean by harmful is thinking about social media as a slot machine. So I don't know, I'm not a gambler, but they have these slot machines and you put money in it and then you get to pull the handle and then you get to see what happens, right? Social media is like a slot machine in that there's a something you have to put in, you have to contribute, you have to participate, right? But the slot machine is designed to not pay out very often. It's designed to make your brain think that if you just keep going, you will eventually get a payoff. It's designed to change the way your brain thinks. And so if we give a middle school kid, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, even 5th, 4th graders access to social media, we're changing the way their brain grows because they're not ready to be able to manage their impulses. And that you can see that all the way up through high school, right? So social media is, I feel strongly about it. I think it's a really dangerous area to give children access to because their brain is still growing. And as adults, we can barely manage our time on social media. And so again, what it does is it creates anxiety, not just because you're waiting to get a positive kind of reinforcement from what you're posting on social media. The other part of the anxiety is constant comparison to other people. And adults feel this too, right? We're like, why does this family look perfect on Facebook? My family's not perfect, so there must be something wrong with me. If adults struggle with this, imagine what a young person is thinking and feeling when they're having to compare themselves against these other pictures and wonderful lives that their friends are posting, or these wonderful things that they get that they don't feel like they have. So like I said, I feel strongly about social media. I think it's a dangerous tool, especially the research shows that middle school in particular is a really dangerous time to give children access to social media because their brain is so much in development. This part of the brain, right, is still very much in
It's pretty
development.
much non-existent in middle school.
Right?
Yeah.
You have to be 23, 24 years old before this thing is done growing. So middle school is really, it's a really vulnerable time to create those pathways of anxiety and comparison. So that's a strong statement, but that's the kind of work we're trying to do with our young people, both in middle school and in high school, is to help them kind of wean off that type of reinforcer.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And that's
Sure.
There's actually IndieFlix made a accompanying film called Like, which is all about social media. And I kind of learned those same types of things.
Yeah.
I love the slot machine comparison. I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah.
They did talk in terms of that they work hard to addict you and pull you in and keep you there, right? Because that's where they make their money. Eyes on the screen is where they make money.
That's right. And in that metaphor, the nickels or the quarters are actually self-esteem, sleep, time with friends, social skills. We're kind of throwing away things, hoping to get a payback that the machine is designed to almost never give you. I've never hit a massive lottery win or a massive payout, unfortunately. So I'm proof that they hardly ever pay out.
I haven't either, but that's probably because I don't gamble. So it's hard to win gambling if you don't gamble. I probably came out ahead by doing that. So
good strategy. That's a good strategy.
Very good. All right. So everybody's been teasing Katie up a little bit. So let's bring her out to to talk a little bit and maybe just start around thinking back to your high school, middle school days. That's for you, not too long ago at all, right? Yeah. And share a little bit about what the experience is like, and as far as, and we'll get into your story deeper, but the pressures of social life and the activities that you're in, and academics, and applying for school or colleges, and all of this stuff that's going on. Maybe you can just share a little bit about all of those pressures that they're feeling.
Yeah, I want to go off of the social media part while it's fresh in my brain. And um, the comparison that Marian mentioned is so real, and it's so true to us, because I'm someone who joined social media really late. She wouldn't let me have social media until I was probably a freshman. I think I was in my freshman year when I got Instagram or whatever. And I have like 460 followers, but a lot of my friends have over 1,000. And sometimes I'm like, well, why don't I have like that many? But at that same time, I know the 460-ish people who follow me. And then I'm like, do they really know that many people? Or is it just people who decide to follow them, and they're just getting likes because whatever. So I have a private account, and I keep it that way just for my own safety. It makes her feel like I'm being safe and whatever. And so yeah, sometimes it's hard when I'm looking on my feed and my friends have 500 plus likes and I only get about, I don't know, 200. And so that comparison sets into me. And at that point, I make the conscious decision to just hop off. I hop off and I think life is greater than this. This was just a little snapshot of what's going on. And that's not my life. It's a little snippet of what I chose to post on there. I'm not going to post if I have a mental breakdown. I'm going to post the good parts of that. And I think that's what we put on a day-to-day basis when we're in school, is we put on a happy face and we're wearing a mask. And even if something is going wrong, we don't show that because we don't want to appear weak. We don't want to be vulnerable, or we don't want people to think that there's something wrong with us. And I think that's where that kind of got me into a very deep downward spiral, where I was pretending like everything was totally fine. I was smiling at school. People thought I was happy because I didn't give them any reason to think otherwise. And I think going into your junior and senior year, you're stressing about college, you're stressing about taking as many AP classes as you can. That way you can get into the best schools. And that wasn't the plan for me. That wasn't my path. And because that wasn't my path, I had a very lovely, easy junior and senior year. I enjoyed my time as a student. I worked, and I think I am an example that you don't have to go the traditional route. I took a gap year after I graduated high school, and I'm in school this year. And so I think, oh gosh, there's just so much pressure on people. And if we just took a step back and explored other options, and parents were open to letting their children take those options, then I think the anxiety in the later years of high school could really be reduced.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love your, talking about the masks we put on, and there's I've heard that several times, as far as, you're right, there's 3 masks we wear, right? The
Yes.
one we show our friends, the one we show our families, and our true face. And I would love to see us show our true face all the time, right? And that's be proud of who you are, and share it with everybody, because you're fantastic to share it that way. So thanks for that. So, I mean, you alluded to a little bit about, the non-traditional route you took, and maybe you can go a little bit deeper into your story, right? And Katie's story inspires me. She always laughs at me, but I sit and just, so much respect for her sharing this story, and the story of strength and everything, and I can't hear it enough. So, if you can share, with the audience a little bit about your journey, that, you kind of alluded to some of the struggles you went to, but maybe you could go a little bit deeper about, what you're feeling, and sort of how you came through that.
Yeah, my condensed version of the story. If you want to listen to the full story, I'm going to plug the podcast for a second. So Z Cares has a podcast with their other co-founder, Sam. She has called Sit Down with Sam. It's a podcast. You can find it everywhere. I did an episode with her, and I went really in depth about my story. But my condensed story begins in 8th grade. And I actually went to the middle school that Karina is a counselor at, and I loved Creekside. I loved my middle school experience, but I began to feel a little bit of sadness in the 8th grade, and it was really quite unexplained, and I didn't know why I was feeling this way. And that was the most frustrating part about it, because I had such a wonderful life and I had great friends, and I did love school, but sometimes I just felt sad And that was frustrating because I really wanted a reason for my sadness. And I felt that there was something wrong with me because there was no outward forces hindering on my emotions. So that was really frustrating. And as I entered my freshman year of high school, it it became so much worse. That's when I started learning more about anxiety and depression. And at that point, it was getting increasingly more difficult to want to go to school. And I would have panic attacks in the morning. It was so difficult for me to even just pass the threshold of my own bedroom door, because that meant I had to get ready for the day and I had to go to school even though I didn't want to. Um, and I physically felt like I couldn't, it was like just like this weight bearing down onto me that if I left the house, something was going to happen, and I didn't know what it was, but I couldn't go to school. And I wasn't being bullied. I had good friends. I bounced around from friend group to friend group because I didn't really find my niche or my little pocket of friends, but nothing was going quote unquote bad in my life. This was just happening. Um, and it was hard. And I couldn't go to school. I could not do it. It was just really, really hard for me. And so at that point, I would be begging my mom not to send me to school. I'm crying on my dad's arms, begging not to send me to school. And like Karina said, I frequented the health office a lot with stomach aches. I made my own stomach aches so that I could convince my mom that I needed to go home because I couldn't go through the day anymore. And at that point, it was the second semester, and I'm still pretty miserable, but my mom is making me go to school every single day. And if I can't, then I can go home. But she made me try. And at that point, I resented her for that because I felt so miserable. And I thought, how worse could I get before you realize that I can't do this? And so she gave me the option, the light at the end of the tunnel at the end of the school year, to find an alternative that worked for me. And we did so. And I made it through freshman year. I started a new school and I began seeing a therapist. And that was the greatest move I could have ever made for myself. It's not for everybody, but the way I did it, I went to an independent study school and I learned independently with an advisor. And my advisor became like a second therapist to me. She talked one-on-one with me about my assignments, but she also talked to me about what was going on in my life. And if I was struggling with anything, if I needed to take more time on something, I could. But, she was really there for me as well as my therapist. And I began also taking medication, and everything was just falling into place for me. And I began practicing self-care and learning how to cope with my anxiety and my depression. And I made it out. I made it through high school, and I refound my love for school again. And at that point, I decided to take a gap year to gain work experience in the bakery, and I'm still working there. I enrolled in school all by myself. I told her, I was like, Mom, I just enrolled. And I feel like I'm at a really, really great point in my life, and to be part of Z Cares and their youth board and be surrounded by other people my age who have gone through the same thing and are passionate about sharing their story and passionate about speaking about mental health. So that's a little bit about me.
It's so, I mean, I don't know any other word to say than just so proud of you for what you've been through and the strength that you've gotten through. And same goes for mom sitting next to you, right? Because it was a journey you guys took together. And I just think it's inspiring, and hopefully others are hearing that, right? I think as Katie walked through her story and the symptoms she was feeling, think back to what Karina was saying about signs and symptoms, right? She was hitting all those, the frequenting the nurse's office with the stomach aches and the not wanting to go and the isolation, and you're just kind of going through that list, and and to find your path and to find your coping, and we'll talk about coping a little bit later. um, but just so proud of that. And if you do want to hear kind of the in-depth story, please do go listen to the podcast, because it's really inspiring. And there's a few other the youth board members on there that share their stories as well. And that's where I took that 3 masks example, was from one of those podcasts. See, I learn a lot from our youth, and they really educate me on sort of how to take care of ourselves and that type of thing. So really, thanks again for sharing. And it's hopefully someone takes that away as okay, now I see it. I see myself and what Katie went through, but that's where I am now. But now I see there is a path through. And I think it also goes to that you don't have to follow the path, right? That's prescribed for you, right? So it's not like, I must take, 18 AP classes and I have to go to Stanford and I have to graduate with honors and this, that, and the other. Take the path you choose to take is the right path, right? But make sure it is your choice. So thank you again, Katie. So we bring Karina back, and just kind of listening to Katie's story of what she's going through, right? So when a parent is sort of watching their kids go through this, how do we kind of separate from, are they experiencing, is it just a teen being a teen, if you will, right? So teen hormones kicking in. Is it just mild anxiety, or do I have a disorder that I really should seek help on? If you can kind of help uncloud that a little bit for us.
Sure. So I think, again, as mentioned in the movie and then on this panel, it's anxiety is a normal part of life, and we will all experience it throughout our life at different moments. However, as a parent or guardian or professional at a school, looking for those warning signs or those signs that kind of go from anxiety that we all kind of go through, and then going into maybe a little bit more of a a diagnosable disorder. I think it really goes to what we had talked about, and Steve, you mentioned, is that excessive, frequent, and chronic feelings of worry and distress. And I think when a teen or a young person when the anxiety is impairing their day-to-day function, their day-to-day normal lives, is interfering in a way where it's difficult for them to do the things that they normally do, whether it be getting up in the morning or, like Katie mentioned, crossing that threshold of her room. That's very real. And I think that as a parent or guardian, it's, you can pick up on some of those signs initially, and you're kind of feeling it out and you're waiting to see how things are going. But if there's that chronic, if it's a kind of a everyday or frequent escalated kind of behavior, or even like a sudden change. And I know sometimes people have talked about maybe changes in school performance and grades, and that definitely can be a factor, but I just want to caution too that sometimes it's not. Sometimes there are students who are able to maintain their high GPA, and yet they're still very much struggling, and so it makes it even more tricky. But I think that if a parent or someone has a thought, if something in their gut and they're noticing these chronic symptoms, and they think that there might be something more going on, that's a perfect time to sit and talk to your young person, to seek out help, to work with the schools. And I love the example with Natalie and Katie, because I think that as a parent, when you see your young person avoiding things that they normally didn't avoid before, as a parent, you do want to keep exposing them. You want to keep, having them try and go little by little. And it's hard because you want to protect them too, but that exposure is really important. As a counselor, I have seen many situations where students have not wanted to attend school, who have stayed in the parking lot in their car and refused to leave. They don't want to enter into the building, kind of a thing. And it's keeping them home. Although it feels you're protecting them in the moment, it's really not doing them very much good at all. It's actually doing them harm. So that exposure is really important. You don't want to enable that avoidance behavior. And because it's so difficult to do that as a parent sometimes, my biggest plug is work with your people, work with your school, work with the people around you, your neighbors, your friends. I mean, your network, and definitely with schools. There, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. And we're going to, in just a few minutes, we're actually going to get a little deeper into resources and where you can turn. But, thanks for sharing that. And the one thing that I do like to say in this, because a lot of times parents could still say, well, but I still don't know. My advice, take it for what it is. If you're questioning, should I go talk to somebody about this? Go talk to somebody. Right, there's no harm in that. It should be no different than I twisted my ankle, should I go see the doctor to see if it's more than just a sprain? Right, so it shouldn't be any different than that conversation. Right, so there is no harm in going to talk to a mental health professional, and just getting a little bit deeper into it. Right, I mean, it could be, yeah, we've got something that we should start dealing with, and let's set up the plan to do that. Or it could be, it seems like everything's okay, right? But no harm at all, but just checking in, right? And we'll get into in just a moment where to check in and kind of how to navigate that space, because trust me, from my own personal experience, it is a confusing space to try to get into, particularly when you're trying to find help for your child. So it is hard, and we're going to try to help sort of unwind that for you a little bit.
Steve, I'm so sorry. Can I add one more thing that
Yes, please.
very important, and I'm sure it'll come up in other areas. I know Nar just talked a little bit about it, but another factor to really keep an eye on is, most definitely, if your young person is talking about self-harm, suicidal ideation, I mean, that most definitely is a cause to really reach out and find some support and inquire a little bit more about that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I absolutely agree, right? If you have a guaranteed crisis situation that you talk about, self-harm, suicidal thought, we always take that very seriously, and we'll talk about where you can learn more about that in just a minute. But it's never said, oh, they're just saying it for attention. Nope, it's a real thing, and it has to be treated as such. And we'll talk about that in just a second. But if maybe we can bring Katie back on. So if just kind of going through those signs and symptoms, and even you went through it yourself, as a friend, kind of a peer-to-peer type situation. If your friend tells you they're struggling, or you're noticing some of those things that Karina just talked about, what are some of the things that that a friend can do to help one another kind of through these situations?
Yeah, it's one thing if your friend tells you, it's another thing if you are noticing it. And I would say that if you're noticing it, don't outright say, what's wrong with you? What's going on? Like, you're not yourself, you're being weird. That's totally not the way to go. I like to think of myself as a pretty intuitive person, and I know my friends pretty well. And so if I notice that they are secluding themselves, if they are deciding not to go out pre-COVID, if they're deciding not to hang out with the friends, if they're deciding that they're not going to come to the bowling alley and hang out, then, and if it's like a repeated process, again, it's that excessive, it's that repetition of not doing anything, then at that point I would start thinking, oh, maybe something's going on with them. And at that point I would say, hey, I'm here for you if you want to talk to me about anything, or if you want to do like a one-on-one coffee type of thing, we can just talk. And you might not even have to bring up if they're depressed or anything. You just get that conversation going. If they come out and tell you about it, then you should feel completely honored that they feel safe talking to you about this type of thing, and that you are their person, and that I hope that you would be able to designate time for them to know that you are there for them, and that you are there to listen, and maybe not even give advice, but just to be that ear, that shoulder to lean on, anything like that. And at that point, as the friend, you can help direct them into the direction that they might need to go, into talking to their doctor or talking to their parents about it. But I think just knowing that they have at least one person by their side to walk through that with is really important.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that. And I believe you're right on, right? Because as particularly peer-to-peer, we don't want to pretend that we're a counselor or a psychologist or whatever the case. Letting them know you're just there for them, I think is a lot of power in that. That now they know, oh, someone's in my corner, right? Someone's there to support me, and I think that's great. Just a reminder to everybody, if you do have questions, please do send them in on chat, and we'll try to get them up online. Just want to put that plug in there. Natalie, is speaking as a parent, right? And obviously Katie shared her story, and you lived through that as well. If from your perspective, if a parent is definitely noticing something doesn't seem right, but the child doesn't really want to talk about it, can you maybe talk a little bit about a parent's perspective on how you might navigate that?
Sure. I didn't really notice it so much in 8th grade, although I do remember a small episode of Katie feeling different. I didn't really pursue because I didn't think it was going to develop into anything else, because quickly as she went into it, she came right out of it and went right back into her normal routine. But it wasn't until high school that I started seeing a change. And I was very fortunate to be working as as the department secretary in special ed. And so I had a lot of resources, and I immediately reached out to the psychologists and I reached out to counselors, and they guided me. And I have to say, for parents, if you see that and your child won't talk with you, don't let that hurt you, because these kids are feeling things that they've never felt before, emotions that they've never felt before, and they don't maybe know how to approach a parent or authoritative figure within their family for many reasons. So if you can't get your child to talk with you, most certainly encourage them to talk to someone. And that can be the counselor, and that can be the coach or the favorite teacher, or even the best friend's parent. There are so many resources out there to do. And for me, it was doing my due diligence. It was talking to those counselors, telling them to, hey, Natalie, call your insurance company. They can recommend therapists. They can recommend who's on your plan for psychiatrists. And Katie and I went through a few psychiatrists until she found the one she was comfortable with when we decided to go on meds. She was lucky to find a great therapist, but there's many, many resources out there, including right here in our own school district.
No, thank you for that. And I saw that the whole panel started nodding their head of, when you talked about, talk to someone, right. I think that was a great add to your story. So thanks for putting that in there. Yeah, and I agree. It's like we can't take it personally if they don't want to talk to us, right? Because they are going through a lot. What in what we do at ZCare is we get the honor of talking to some really insightful youth, and we have youth events that we put on. And one of the questions we ask is, talk about the support between the adults in the community and the youth, and what they want the adults to hear. And the one thing we hear probably more than anything else is the adults just need to know we need them, we want them, and we don't always show it. Right. And they're aware that they're not showing that they need the support, but they're saying that they need the support. Right. So that just letting them know you're there for them and helping them encourage, like, I understand you don't want to talk to me, like you said, talk to a coach, a teacher, a friend, please talk. Right. So thank you for putting that out there. So we're gonna shift now to go deeper into those resources, and we've kind of touched on the topic here and there along the way. I just want to check if we have any questions. Nothing right now. Okay, so it's kind of like I said, navigating the space. Probably the top question that we get from adults as we go through these types of things. So I want to start with Marion, and you talked a little bit about the Wellness Center, and I want to hear more about that if you don't mind. And then if you could talk a little bit more about what are the Castro Valley schools doing to address anxiety in the kids? Where can families start if they're seeking help? How do they navigate that with, at least within the schools, right? Kind of helping the parents navigate that space a little bit.
Yeah, happy to. Make sure I don't forget anything, Steve, because I have a lot to share. I don't want to get off track. Yeah, this is such a great kind of way to transition the conversation, and I'm really, really honor you, Katie, and Natalie, for sharing your story, because it's when we share our own stories of what we've been through, other people become braver to share their stories, right? No one's going to share if no one's going to be honest about it. So, that's a really important part, and I just wanted to honor your story, Katie, in particular. So as far as what in our community, Castro Valley Unified, we have different levels of trying to bring social emotional awareness to all of our students. So I'm going to start there and then build up. So in our district, all grade levels, TK, transitional kindergarten, all the way up to 12th grade, we have social emotional learning curriculum for all students. So that means we're teaching kids how to express or identify their own emotions, other people's emotions, and how to be in relationship with each other, and how to handle, we call them big feelings, right? Like, we're having big feelings, big anger or big excitement or big sadness. So we work really hard at teaching just a very base level of understanding of our own emotional world, our own internal world. So that's an important part of our baseline. And then as we, especially as we get up kind of the age levels, each school has a mental health professional, a behavioral health professional. How cool is that in Castro Valley? That doesn't happen in other districts. So all of our schools have a counselor type person whose job it is to work with parents and work with kids and work with teachers around these issues. So no matter what school you go to, or your student goes to, there is a person there for you to talk to. And you can just say, can I talk to the counselor? And they'll put you to that person. Ms. Fuentes is one of our best. Creekside is lucky. But there are people like that at every single school. So please reach out to that level. We also have additional services around our special ed department. As Ms. Hung noted, there are psychologists, there's behaviorists, they help around behavior. We have lots of really resourced folks, and again, their job is to support parents and students. So those are baseline at every single school in our district. So as we move up into sort of middle and high school, which is where sometimes students can start to feel more of these symptoms because the stakes are higher, right? There's more demand. Kids are involved in a million extracurriculars. Their life is very exciting, but there's a lot of demand on them. They want to sleep less and be with their friends more, all of which is developmentally appropriate. But that can increase anxiety levels, right? And trying to, like Katie said, having to figure out what masks to wear when increases anxiety. So what we have, especially at secondary and middle and high school, is we have groups of staff that are able to discuss the students' needs and connect them to resources. So one of our big partners in town is called Eden Counseling. If anybody knows where Pete's is, Eden Counseling is like right behind the Pete's. So one Pete's in town, so we all know where that is. Eden Counseling has staff at both middle schools and the big high school, Castro Valley High, and Redwood, our alternative high school. So they're a really big partner for us. And I want to point out just a couple other things. This is for all kinds of big feelings, as we call them, right? Not just anxiety, but anxiety is really common. It's very common in our schools. And again, as the wellness center person, I'll talk about Castro Valley High School. We just opened a brand new building like 3 weeks ago to receive students. And so our wellness center is a drop-in center. So any Castro Valley High School student can walk out of their class. They can walk from the car to the wellness center. They can walk on the way out lunch to the wellness center. They can walk straight up to us and be seen for crisis counseling, for drop-in immediate counseling. There's no cost. So that's something that we've never really had in Castro Valley. So that is available to everyone. And so I'll put a link in there as far as resources go. So that's a big change. And again, one last thing I'll say is it's another resource, and we don't really think about it, but Katie mentioned that she had done a lot of research around finding a comfortable academic environment. And we have so many resources for that. I want parents to know that there are lots of ways we can make the academic environment comfortable for your student if they're struggling with something, or they need a break, or something happened, there was a loss in the family and they need a change. There are lots of things we can work out. We often don't know what all the options are, but Ms. Fuentes is an expert in this, and I'm sure Ms. Hung is too, because you had to research it. Katie had to look them all up, but there are lots of ways we can adapt the educational environment to meet your needs. So that's going to the counselor and saying, hey, we have these needs, what can you do for us? And it's really important to know. It doesn't have to be 6 periods a day, every day for a whole school year. It doesn't have to be like that. There are lots of ways we can support. So what did I not answer, Steve? The parent part?
Yeah, I think you did a great job of
Okay.
in the landscape. I mean, I think that the only question I would have is like, if I'm that parent and I want to start the process of finding help, who do I start with, right? Do I call my school's counselor? Do I call the district counselor? Just all of the above.
Yes. Yeah, and Ms. Hung has been through this too. I would say you can call your school and say, may I speak to the counselor?
Okay.
Because there's one at every school. That's probably the best place to start. Ms. Fuentes, would you agree with that?
Yeah, no,
I'm sure you get calls like that all the time.
I definitely would. And if you have a student who's in middle school and yet you had a really great relationship with the elementary school and you're new to the middle school, you're not quite sure of people and that, go to your elementary school and say, hey, who do you know at Creekside or Canyon or whatever? Who can I talk to? So, that everybody is connected. And as Marian said, we are fortunate to have a counselor of some sort at every single school site. And I would say also, your doctor, if you are able to connect with a doctor, someone at a clinic, somebody, whatever you have access to, I would say that is also a really great place to start. Yeah.
No, that's great. Thank you both for sharing into that. I couldn't agree more, particularly, doctor, it doesn't have to be a mental health professional. Go to your pediatrician. They also can help you navigate the space. Right. There's a lot of people out there that can help you. And you guys are super lucky in Castro Valley to have such a strong team in place that's ready to take your concerns very seriously and help you, kind of find the right path to go down. But there are a lot more, and let's talk about some of those. Maybe, Natalie, you can come on and talk, from an adult perspective, what resources do you see that are out there that can help them kind of navigate this space? We've heard about the schools, but what else is out there?
Well, there are many organizations out there that offer, including our own Z-Cares and through our school district, many resources are out there. And I just want to emphasize that definitely parents do need to educate themselves, because I know some families will call me up at my school and they'll voice an opinion, or they'll say that their child needs help, but they don't believe that it's something that's permanent. They just think it's going to be better like next week or next month. And so they don't really invest in doing the research or invest in educating themselves, because they think it's just temporary. But I think a family or a parent, and you obviously want to help it, otherwise you wouldn't be here tonight. You wouldn't have found this platform. But I'm saying get out there and just do your due diligence, do your research. And I offered to the people last night, if you don't know who to call at your own level, call me. I'm at Castro Valley Elementary. Call me. I will point you into the direction. I will get you the resources that you need.
No, that's great. And thank you for that. And as Natalie mentioned, Z-Cares does have resources available. I think one thing she said is educate yourself. We offer what's called Youth Mental Health First Aid. It's a class designed for adults to support youth. And it's, think of it like CPR for mental health. Has a lot of things that we've talked about today. I know, Katie and Natalie are certified first aiders. And the rest of the panel may have been through the course as well. There we go. I see a hand going up. Awesome. Z-Cares does offer this out there. We do have 2 courses coming up, May 22nd, June 5th. One of the 2, again, Z-Cares is going to offer it to you for free. The only thing that we ask for, and this is the only time we do this in an event, is we do ask for a $25 deposit. It helps us secure your seat, just to make sure that that's all set. And then that $25 gets refunded back to you after the course. But please sign up. It is it's an 8-hour investment, and talk about time well spent to learn about deep into signs and symptoms, and it sets up a whole strategy of what to do, right? What to do in a non-crisis situation, what to do in a crisis situation. And it really, it's fantastic. My wife and I are certified trainers. We have 2 other trainers within ZCare, so we've got a nice little team here ready to give you guys the support. So please sign up. We'd love to have you join one of those courses coming up, and and join the discussion. So that's part of the process too, and the training is a sharing of stories with all the participants, and so there's some great areas there as well. So I think we are going to throw a chat in there of how to get to the signups so that's at zcares.org/events. You can sign up for one of those 2 courses that's out there. And so Nargis, you're at the Crisis Support Center, and it's a whole nother resource that a lot of people don't even think about as a resource, beyond crisis. And so maybe you can talk about that a little bit, and also, feel free to share in additional resources that are entering your mind.
I'm sure. I'm first going to put a link in the chat for a list of websites and books that Stanford has put together around children and anxiety. I know Natalie had suggested people kind of educate themselves, because the more confident we feel, the more we can really know what we're working with and what are some options for us. So just in case people are looking for that. In terms of the crisis line, I would say one of the first misconceptions about the crisis line is that somebody has to be in crisis to utilize our services. And I'm putting the website right there for the Crisis Center. We get about 40,000 calls a year locally in Alameda County. Our offices are in Oakland. So and the reason I say that is I want people to be able to, like, when they make a referral, to kind of say, I saw someone talking about this one time, and they're actually local, and a lot of them are volunteers, and they're people who really care. And only about 10% of their callers are really in crisis. Everyone else is calling to get some support. And I think that's an important number. It's something that sticks with people after I talk to them, because the assumption is every single person who's calling us is kind of calling us from their darkest moment. And we certainly have those callers as well, but we also have callers that are calling because they're worried about a family member, a spouse, a child. We have callers who just had a really rough day at work. We have callers who can't sleep at night. And in order to call us, it doesn't mean that somebody has no social supports themselves. People who call us often do have access to other supports. Sometimes they have a therapist, but the reality is at 2 a.m., none of those other supports are available. When people can't fall asleep and kind of their thoughts are turning, it's helpful to just be able to say it to someone who's there just for this very purpose, who's trained, and then be able to put it aside and hopefully get some rest. I would say we get a lot of calls during the after work and the overnight hours. And that's why we are there 24/7. We want people to be able to have access to us. And for this group tonight, we also have a youth text line. And that one's open 4 to 11 every day. I just put it in the chat. And I think it's a way, like, over the years, we have noticed the number of calls we get from young people has declined, but the number of texts we get from young people, we have had the text line for 11 years now, has gone up every single year. And I know our resources are made available in Castro Valley School District. Our Teens for Life program, which is our education group, goes out to schools and makes presentations, comes to your classrooms every single year and presents to students about how to know if a friend needs help, what to do if you need help. We want everyone to be equipped with information, but also the resources they need for help seeking. And the last thing I will say is geared toward parents. If you're supporting a young person in your life who is having a hard time, also consider getting yourself some support. I had a mom who I talked to the other day, and she was like, do you think I should quit my job? And that is a really rough moment to be sitting in as a family, as a parent. And I was like, before you make any decisions, take 2 days off and find yourself someone to talk to. She's been putting so much energy into supporting her child. And I didn't want her to make this like split-second major life decision in that moment. So really don't neglect yourself while you're trying to support someone else, because that comes through. And if anything else, you could be modeling that, like, I need help too. Like, we don't want the young person in the household to feel like you're the one that needs help. We want to model that everyone needs support at some point.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. And I couldn't agree more about taking care of ourselves, because it's very well proven that if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of others, right? One of our youth board members had a quote that always sticks with me: is self-care is not selfish care, right? We absolutely need to to help ourselves through that. If I can bring Katie back on, who's kind of our resident Z-Cares expert in self-care. She's talked to so many of her team members about self-care and what they do and that. And so maybe you can share a little bit about, just throwing ideas out there about, one is, how to calm myself if I'm, dealing with an anxiety moment, but also, kind of long-term self-care to help me manage my feelings.
Yeah, first of all, I want to kind of define self-care, because for me, a couple of years ago, it was a totally foreign concept and idea. And self-care is just this act of taking time for yourself to kind of refuel whatever you might have been giving out. It's taking a moment to become in tune with what your body is telling you. It's doing something that you find calming, something that you enjoy. Anything along those lines. And so self-care for me personally, I've taken up knitting. I really, really love it. I bake. Obviously, I'm in pastry school. It's still something that I find very calming to me. I like to listen to music, and I think music is a universal language that is, there's something out there for everybody. I believe Nargis mentioned if you are in a certain situation, what she does with her with what she does with people is that she has them name 5 things that they see. Another thing I do is 3 things that I hear, 3 things that I feel, and that really helps ground me. And that's what I do to help other people if they're having a panic attack. It's happened before in a performance that I was in. I'm just like, okay, name all the things, tell me 5 things you see, do this, and kind of rub your chest and just center yourself in what's going on in your body and take deep breaths. So that's what I like to do to help other people. But self-care, there's no one thing for everybody, and you kind of have to find the thing that works for you, because for some people it might be going for a jog and being out in nature, and for me that's definitely not it. I don't resort to that, but it does work for a lot of people, and something else that might work for me might not work for other people as well. So it's really thinking about your hobbies and what you enjoy, and that can be part of your practice to set 20 minutes of your day to just to do that a little bit. Maybe it's doing a little bit of yoga, maybe it's just sitting in your room listening to music, catching up on the news or whatever. Well, I don't know how news can be self-care, but it's just taking time to be with yourself. And like Steve said, you can't take care of others if you're not taking care of yourself.
Thank you. That's so well said. And as I said, the ideals that she has generated through our site and through her talking with everybody about self-care has sort of helped me craft a list of things that I need to do, right? Because I'm in that same boat of, try to take care of everything else and then you forget yourself. And it's really important. To thank you for that. I'm going to, as we kind of head down the final stretch here, I'm going to check in if we have any questions in. Okay, so no questions. So as I talked about in the front, as we wrap up, and I'm going to ask each of the panelists to say a few words. We talked about our challenge, and one of the areas of the challenge is to practice self-care for the entire month of May, right? So the hope is you start practicing for the entire month of May, keep going past May. So I'm gonna throw a curveball at the audience as they wrap up. So I definitely want you to share kind of your final thoughts, your generic thoughts. But I'd love to hear, as we move across the group, what you do for self-care. And I think it just helps others hear, what others are doing, and what works for Natalie might not work for me, but Karina may say something I'm like, oh, that might work for me. It is about finding the thing that does work for you. So we just, your final thoughts for the adults and the youth in the audience tonight, and in addition to that, what you do to, what you're going to do and what you do to practice your self-care. So again, I'll follow my screen. So we're going to start with the Katie and Natalie window.
First of all, again, say thank you to the families and to the students that came tonight. We certainly appreciate that. We hope that you can take away something from tonight. Please, parents, be patient. Listen to your children. If they're not willing to talk, give them space, because that's most important, that they need to think their emotions through, feel everything through before they can even talk to you. And once they talk to somebody, they'll probably come back and open up to you, because things that they've learned are now making sense. I always practice self-care. I love to read. I love to walk. And my guilty pleasure is probably reading a People magazine, because it takes no brains, it's pure entertainment, and I enjoy that. And I'll admit to probably reading those once a night.
And eating my baked goods.
And eating Katie's baked goods. It's very hard to live with a baker, and that's why I have to walk.
My closing remark is that there is strength in vulnerability, and I would encourage more parents and guardians to be open about their own emotions, and to talk about what's going on with yourself to your children. That way, then they could maybe feel that there's a space for them to be able to talk about what's going on in their own life as well. Like I mentioned, I bake, and I've been knitting like every single day. So my brain has just kind of been calm and smooth sailing for the past month and a half or so. Music all the time. When words fail, music is there for me. And that's actually the way I kind of conveyed my first emotions to my mom. So maybe it's subtly hinting when your children plays a certain song in the car, listen to the lyrics, and maybe they're trying to tell you a message, because I was doing that with her. And maybe if your child is really into music, then that might be their way of sharing with them. But there's always hope. I think I am living proof of that. I didn't think I was going to get out of high school alive, and here I am. And I feel bright and warm and not dark and stormy.
Thank you. And that sharing all of that is great. And like I said, we're so proud of Katie of what she's been through, and proud of Natalie for taking that journey with her. It does take a team, and I love the talk about vulnerability. I think it's important as adults we show our vulnerability to our kids, and we don't have to always be a rock. It's okay to say I had a bad day today, right? And I think that's great. So thanks for putting that out there. All right, Karina, you're up.
Okay, thank you. So my closing thoughts would be, you're not alone. And that goes out to all the young people and all the families and the parents and guardians and everyone. You are truly not alone. And I am a firm believer in it takes a village. And I know that at times it can feel very isolating, whether you're a young person going through anxiety, or if you are a family member or a parent who's experiencing your own anxiety or your child's anxiety. And I truly feel if you can work up that strength and you can be vulnerable and you can reach out to just one person, it really does take a village. And once you do that, you'll see that people are really out there. They care, they want to help, they want to support. And you just feel that much stronger. And that goes to especially the young people. And if you're a person who talking and walking into a counseling office and being vulnerable is really hard, which it is, there are other modes of communication. You can email, you can handwrite a note, you can mail it off. I mean, there are so many different ways that you can express yourself to someone. And so please, just communication is the big thing. For self-care, with a lot of my students, we talk about this imaginary toolbox that we all have, that we put our coping skills in. And mine can be different than yours, but I always give my examples, and I always tell my middle schoolers, now I know you can't identify with this one, but soon enough you will. But when I need to just de-stress, or I'm going through something, I just get in the car and drive. So they all can't do that just yet, but for me, taking a long drive, taking a walk, identifying someone that I trust, that I can call, reading People magazine. Oh my gosh, Natalie. Now I think my mom did that all the time. I think that was self-care for her, now that you say that. So those would be a few of mine. Thank you.
Thank you. I love the shout outs to People magazine. That's fantastic. And honestly, we're big fans of People magazine. I actually did I think it was about a year and a half ago or so. They did a whole article on Z-Cares. So we were in a I think Blake Shelton was on the cover of that one, if I remember right. So yeah, big fans of People magazine. All right, so moving on to Marion.
Thank you, everybody. And yeah, again, thank you so much for hosting tonight and everybody joining us. So some quick closing comments. I want to name that, we've been through a really difficult year. And it has, in some ways brought out these kinds of emotions in all of us. There's a lot of grief and loss out there in the community. And there are also groups of people that have been especially affected and impacted. And I want to name those because those, as adults, we need to be looking out for our community members, right? Not just our families, but the sports teams our kids are on, or the circles that we work, or at our workplace. And those, communities include our African-American community, our Asian Pacific Islander community, our LGBTQ community, right? We've got all kinds of folks who are our neighbors and our colleagues and our classmates that are really suffering in some ways even more, right? Because of the inequity in our community. So I just want to put that out there. I want to name those communities in particular. And part of the challenge can be how do we support members of those smaller community parts of our communities that might be going through an especially rough time, and our youth, that's why we're here tonight, right? Especially our youth. So I want to name that. And then my self-care thing, this is a small thing, but it's made a significant difference. I weaned myself off of caffeine because caffeine was making me anxious, and not in a good way. And it sounds small, but now I notice that if I accidentally get a real coffee, I don't feel good. It does not help me at all. So it's just sort of a nutritional thing. So, look at what you're eating. Are you eating a lot of sugar? Are you eating a lot of caffeine? Do you have coffee in the morning, Diet Coke for lunch, something, real sugary at night? It really can impact your emotional state and the way that your body responds to it. So that's my one self-care thing, is I just don't do caffeine anymore. And my family can tell the difference when I've accidentally had it. And they're like, Mom, go drink some water. You got to chill. So that's what I'm doing for myself. So thank you again for inviting me to this panel.
Absolutely, thank you. All right, Nargis.
Great. For self-care, starting a few months ago, I started going to bed at 8 o'clock on Saturdays. So all week, no matter how tired I am, I know I have that night coming. So it has ended this doom feeling in my mind that I will be tired forever, because that used to be my narrative. I would be tired and be like, this is it. This is my life. I will be tired forever. But now I know once a week, I'll get a reset, even if something comes up during the week where I just don't sleep well. And I totally look forward to it. And it does not make me the coolest person, because I go to bed at 8 o'clock on Saturdays, and everyone knows that. And my one kind of takeaway is, a lot of people don't know how to start the conversation. My one suggestion would be don't wait till the day that you really need the conversation. So tomorrow night at dinner, be last night I went to this thing at the school and they said this, what do you think about that? Or if you hear something on the radio, you see something on TV, you read something in People magazine, be oh, I saw this, what do you know about this? What do you think about this? So that the channels of communication are opened up before we really need it. So if that's at all possible in your family, I think that would be a great investment in future conversations.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. And as we wrap up, and we can stay on a little bit longer, and I'll throw out there as I throw out my final words, but if anyone wants to,
Steve, can I say one more thing? For the students that are on, your parents love you unconditionally, and all they want is for you to be happy and healthy. So your parents may not be on with you, and they may not even know you're on this tonight, but give them a chance. And when you're ready, they're going to be there, open arms, ready to listen to you. And like I said, love you unconditionally. So I just want to put that out there. I really appreciate the students that are here tonight.
Thanks for adding that. That's a great add. And I'll quickly say, if you do want to verbally ask a question, go ahead and raise your hand, and we'll unmute you and allow you to ask that question. So I'll just throw that out. We've got someone monitoring our list. And just my final words, and I should stop going last on this because everybody says such a great thing. I don't want to repeat. What I will say is that, whatever you're feeling, your feelings are real, and don't invalidate that. And it doesn't make you odd or weird or anything. It's very normal to experience the feelings you're having, whether it's anxiety or depression, or, even putting those types of labels maybe not matter as much as, you're just feeling something, and it's okay to raise your hand and say, I need help. Right. And that could start with a family member, could start with a friend, could start with your counselor, could start with your coach, your teacher, your, whoever, there's someone out there that wants to listen. There's someone out there that wants to help. So I'll leave that and just remind you of the challenge, again, for the month of May, talk about mental health. Go to the ZCare site that we put up there for CVUSD and download our discussion guide and give it a go as a family. See how it goes. To have a real conversation. So start talking about mental health. Reach out to somebody. There's a lot of power in sending a text just saying, "Hey, I'm thinking about you." Right? People, then they feel like, oh, someone does care. Right. And it's really doesn't take much energy for us to send those types of messages out. And our final challenge is practice self-care. And you just heard some tips, and I'll give you mine just really quick is, and I'm trying to get better at it because I wholeheartedly admit I'm not as good at this as I want to be, but I've started to take more walks. And I take a cue from my daughter, and Katie even talked about it too, of listening to music. I probably listen to different music than they do, but although Katie's got really good taste in music, my daughter and I are on polar opposites, but her music works for her and my music works for me. So it's whatever works. So my wife and I will even go tonight after this is all over and just kind of decompress after this and spend some time walking in a park. And I've got a weird fascination with owls. So we go out at night and I look for owls, and I have some really cool pictures that we have seen some, so it's kind of fun. But that's my thing, right? So, everybody has theirs. So thank you, everybody. Thank you to this panel. You guys are fantastic. It was my honor to be on this, and we were so happy to partner with Castro Valley Unified Schools and, to bring this to everybody and just start this conversation. And please, let's keep it going. This event will be recorded. We're going to get it up on that same ZCare site for you guys. Look for it probably towards the latter part of the weekend, and we'll leave it up there for a good amount of time to allow everybody. And maybe Natalie, I'll work with you to help communicate out that it's out there. And as I know, everybody who signed up wasn't able to make it tonight, which is totally reasonable. We know it's a crazy time of year right now, but it's out there to enjoy and share. So, any questions come in as a final thought? That really concludes our evening. I'll hang out here for a few minutes in the event someone does want to chat with me. I don't know if any of the other panel members can hang out for a few minutes. And I know it's just now past 8 o'clock. So again, thanks for spending the last hour and a half with us. And just go out there and, like I said, let's start talking about it. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for hosting. Good night.